Hi, I'm Connie Hemmer from The Painting Photographer. Thanks for joining me and welcome back. And today we're going to be using the Cottage Colors, the new Cottage Colors. However, I'm late and we're going to use them on some thrifted items. Follow along. The first cottage color we're starting out here is juniper. I love this juniper color. It's a nice sagey country-y green. You want to stir these cottage colors up from the bottom to the top and make sure that you get everything all stirred up. This terracotta pot I had put in the molds on before, and they have dried for 24 hours, so they're completely dried. I went ahead and put the cottage colors right over the top. You can see the coverage on this one is pretty good, and the coverage on that tin is very well also. These candlesticks were a bit darker color, so one coat coverage is not as good. They will need 2, sometimes 3 coats of the cottage colors to get some good coverage on them. So these candlesticks were a good transformation with this cottage color juniper. I do like them a lot in the juniper color. When I store my brush from when I'm doing 1 coat to 2 coats, I put it in a baby wipe and I just let it sit on the side to make sure that it has some moisture so that it doesn't dry out. The cottage colors will dry your brush out and it will be ruined, so make sure that you are taking proper care of them. I wanted to mix the colors for this tin and have a little bit of a darker juniper look on the bottom, so I took the new anvil cover, which is a color which is a black, and I mixed it right on the surface of this tin, making the bottom of the tin a little bit darker than the top. You can see that the color has changed a little bit, which you can mix these cottage colors together and make your own, which is really fun to do. The items are all painted now. I'm going to do a finishing touch on them. They do have a built-in sealer, so you can go right in with this dark wax and you do not have to clear wax it at all. So, which is fantastic that it has that type of coverage and you can just skip that clear or big top step. So that tin turned out really nice. And these candlesticks, I'm going in with the white wax. I do not have to clear wax them first. The white wax comes off really nice, but it stays in those crevices and makes kind of a beachy looking look for these juniper candlesticks. So again, using that white wax, and for DIY wax, you can just do the entire thing. You do not have to worry about it getting stuck on there at any point, and then just pull it right back off with a dry lint-free cloth, and you'll have perfect beachy looks. Right here I'm pulling apart a lampshade and I'm going to make a skeleton shade. So you just pull all those fabrics off of that lampshade and then spray paint it white. The next color we're going to start out with here is plum pudding. I have a couple items that I'm going to paint this very, very pretty purple. And it's kind of like a grayish purple, which I'm not really a purple fan, but this purple, it is really good. I did like the color that Jamie and Zeb had come up with. It's very, very grayish, heatherish looking. So I went ahead and painted right over the top of that tile that's on this I call it a mail holder. I'm not really sure what the function is of this box, but I call it a mail holder where if you had this in your house, you could stick your whatever mail came in for the day, you could stick it in that little slot so everybody sees it and then it's still kind of organized. So I went ahead and gave this all one coat. That tile is going to obviously take a few more coats than the rest of it. This urn is a plastic urn and it's kind of a heavy plastic, so I'm not really sure what it's made out of, just kind of a resiny type. And then this pig, he was just kind of a fun little pig. And I know pigs should be pink, but he was going to be plum purple. I went ahead and gave everything a second coat just to give it a nice coverage. This is a one-step paint, so you do not need to seal it. So when you do the two coats, you're really just saving yourself some time by not having to seal it up. This urn is going to be beautiful when it's all done, so I can't wait for you to see it. This pink, or this piggy, he's not pink, he's purple. I'm not really sure what to do with him, so you'll have to give me some ideas. I took the IOD Lover of Flowers transfer that is from the spring 2024 collection and tried to decide which one I wanted to put in that little tile space there. I took some painter's tape and I went right over the top of the wood, so just that tile part was sticking out. And I'm going to use the lattice stamp that comes from the, I believe it's called Punch stamp. And so I went ahead and inked up that with the mixing ink white, which is a good permanent white. Don't use chalk paint white. And then I realized it's going to go over the top and get onto that top edge and the side edge. So I had to make sure that I put tape on there as well so I didn't get any ink up there. And then I just went ahead and put that latticey looking stamp for a background on this tile. And you want to make sure you hold it with one hand and then stamp it, make sure it's completely stamped with the other. Don't let go of it because then you'll have a double image. And I did a second stamp on here, just lined up those edges. And since I do have it taped down, I didn't have to worry about it getting on my project. Peel up the tape and everything is all perfectly aligned. You're going to let that ink dry for just a bit, and this was the Lover of Flowers transfer. This is the apple blossoms. I cut that word off. I can use it at a different point when I use the rest of the apple blossoms that are there. And I trimmed this off so that it would go right onto the tile and not hang over the edge. And I do like to use transfers where you trim off some of that edge. I don't know, it just makes them look a little bit more complete versus having that stem hanging out there from the middle of nowhere. So it has a starting and an ending point, in my opinion. So you put that transfer on, you use the stick that's provided in the transfer, and then you just rub it off and you'll see it release. You can see that the color changes. You'll see it release. This is the fun project to do transfers and just watch it release. So once it is all released from that backing, you're going to peel it up, make sure everything is stuck, and then this is called burnishing. So you take that transfer paper and just go right over the top, making sure everything is stuck down. Now we're going to take some dark wax here and just highlight the plum pudding a little bit more than what it already is and give it kind of a deep, rich look. You can go right over top of the transfer and the stamp. Everything will be fine. Just kind of gives it a nice aged look to it. I'm going to finish waxing this one, and then I'm also going to put white wax on that urn, and you can just watch the process of how this is turning out so beautiful. This new anvil cover color from Cottage Colors is exactly what we needed. A nice dark color that can go on your projects and be a one-step paint. So if you want to use this as you're going to put a chalk paint over the top of this one-step paint so that your surface doesn't come through, this is the perfect color to do that with. I painted up this gold frame. I know a lot of people probably like that gold frame. That's not really my style. So I painted it in this anvil color, which it's going to take, I believe this took 3 coats to completely cover. But it is worth it in the long run to go ahead and put this color on and have it be a one-step paint. So here's another candlestick that I did and another metal candlestick. This goes on all types of surfaces. And then a wooden birdhouse also. I put this on. So it goes on all types of surfaces and works perfect. Everything needed a second coat and some of them needed a third coat. And you can see that this color is really deep dark and it's perfect for putting on as a base layer. I put a inlay on the top of this birdhouse. This inlay is from the spring collection also. It's called Lattice Rose. I know they sold out in record time with this paint inlay. It's the perfect inlay to, if you haven't ever used an inlay before, it's a good one to try it on. So now I just made my creases in this inlay and so then I come back and I cut them off. And as long as you have the overlays on the sides, you don't have to cut that off. If you don't have to go right up to the edge because it won't transfer to something that you don't have a sealer or a paint on. So you can see that the paint inlay lost some of its paint, which I didn't know it would do that, but it had too much folding that was going on with it. I am using the DIY liquid patina, which is my favorite medium for doing the paint inlays, and I just put the liquid patina on there and then I sprayed my paint inlay with water first before I attached it on there. After I got it all sealed up, I put a hole in it for the stem of that birdhouse. And after I got it all sealed in there, I took water and I soaked it down with water again and took a baby wipe and just kind of dried up the top surface so it wasn't puddling or anything, and made sure that it was all nice and tightly attached. After it dries, you're not going to let it totally dry, but it's pretty much dry. You're going to go ahead and spray it again. Wait about 30 to 40 seconds to make sure that it gets nice and moist, and then you can peel your paint inlay back up again. If it doesn't feel like it's peeling up, if it feels like it's sticking down, give it another squirt with your water bottle, your Mr. bottle there, and it should come up. And the design will be right on that surface. It is such a beautiful design. If you don't have this lattice rose, I do have a few in stock. Now, here's what I was talking about with actually adding some chalk paint over top of this one-step paint. This is the DIY's Vintage Linen, and I added it right over top of that anvil color, and then you can go and distress the white back down to that anvil color, and you don't have to worry about that anvil coming up because that's not going to distress with a baby wipe. So this is the perfect opportunity for you to distress back down to a nice black surface. We're going to go ahead and use Big Top. Big Top does separate when you do leave it sit, so make sure that you stir it so that it's nice and mixed up in there and all those pigments are mixed in. And we're going to seal in this Vintage Linen DIY chalk base paint and make sure that we have a really good coverage on it so that everything is all sealed in and it has a real beautiful distressed look. Here's another way that you can have a white look along with your black surface is just use the DIY's white wax, which is my favorite wax, and it'll give it a nice washed look. We're using the Joy de Roses stamp on or transfer on this one. I'm going through some of the pages trying to figure out which is the best page, and I'm going to use this one right here. and I put it underneath the glass to see how it's going to look, and then I go and I trim off the edges so that it'll fit right on the top of the glass. And I trim off the top and the sides to make it a good fit. When you put this on glass, it's going to stick as soon as you let it go. So make sure that you have it in the correct location. I wish I would have known this glass could pop out before I was doing this process, but as I was doing it, you can see on the left-hand side there that the glass kind of wiggles and pops out. I have fixed that. It no longer does that. But when you put a transfer on glass, it will come off really easy. I do like to put transfers on glass. So now you're not going to use any harsh cleaners to clean this glass. You're just going to use a damp cloth and it'll be just fine. I am still going to burnish this transfer to make sure that it's all on there. We have here is Provincial. I am going to take this Provincial, which is stirred up and got a nice consistency, and I'm going to mix some paint frosting with it, which is going to make it thicker. So I put it into a separate little cup, and DIY has a paint frosting, which when you put this paint frosting into the Cottage Colors, it immediately gets thick. There's no waiting process. So I went and put this on really, really thick, making sure that I was kind of pouncing the paint, making some nice textures on this wood bowl. You can see this wood bowl had already been painted and had some Saltwash texture to it. So I was just adding to the enhancement of this bowl. And once those Cottage Colors, they do have a self-leveling, so they're going to try and self-level themselves out. So while it's in the drying process, you're going to want to make sure that you keep an eye on it so that it doesn't level out and make those bumps smooth. I wanted them to be a little bit on the more rougher side than the smooth side. So I made sure that I went back when it was partially dried and stippled them again so that they had some nice peaks to them. Here is a metal candlestick holder that it didn't have a whole lot of character to it, so I added this paint frosting provincial mixture to it, so gave it some depth and some texture, which helped a lot. Next up, we have this Longenberger basket. It was painted in a lime green already, and then it had, I didn't realize it, but it had magic marker that made that design on there. So when I went over it with the Provincial, it made this smeary black look to it. So I just went with it. I couldn't do anything about it at that time. So I just continued on, and my second coat kind of took that away a little bit. Now I'm going to dark wax this Provincial. It is a beautiful color, and then when you dark wax it, it gives it a real nice, rich look. So I really do like it, and I also like it with white wax too. So I hope that you will too. In an 8 ounce now, which is a perfect sample size for your projects. I need to have a picture in this video. I'm going to insert it in of how many projects I got out of this 1 8 ounce container of One Step paint. I painted a lot of items and they're all finished. You don't even have to seal them. You don't have to wax them if you don't want. I waxed them. I like the look of wax, but you don't have to. This 8 ounce container does a lot of projects. Find them on my website at thepaintedphotographer.com.